India has been identified as a vegetarian country since ages. But if you look at the data how India eats, 69% of Indians are non-vegetarian.
This young country will very fast translate into a liable country because we don't have enough resilience. Our people are diabetic. Their tolerance to diseases, to climatic changes, to weather parameters is going lesser and lesser.
But if we're talking about disease reversal, is there any particular way of living or a certain type of food that we should be eating?
One has to be aware of what one is eating. Figuring out more sustainable ways of having a healthy food is brown bread actually brown bread. It is normal wheat bread where brown color is added.
At the end of the day, body doesn't run on junk food. It needs proper balanced meal. And that is what is running out of our platter very quickly. Milk being one thing which was severely adulterated.
What is milk adulterated with?
Milk is adulterated with shampoo.
Welcome to Sustainable Tea with Shreya. Siddharth, Kavya, thank you so much for doing this with me today. You're both incredible food scientists. You've done a lot of work in the food space. I cannot wait to dive into all things nanotechnology, AI, biotechnology, and all the work that you're doing around cultivated meat as well. Siddharth, can I start off with intros? Can I ask you to start, please?
Thank you, Shreya, for having us here, and it's a pleasure for me to share the experience of Clear Meat. So I'm Siddharth. I'm the founder at Clear Meat. We are India's only ISO certified lab-grown meat company, which makes meat in lab, and this is raw meat. This is not mock meat. This is actual meat. And we have been in this industry for the last 4 years, and we are now gearing ourselves to make this product available to the consumer.
I have so many questions, but Kavya, I would love for you to introduce yourself and the work that you do.
Thank you, Shreya, for having me here. And I am Professor Kavya Dashora. I work at IIT Delhi. And my area of expertise or my area of interest is food. And I apply a lot of artificial intelligence to create mock meats, that is simulated meat, and then I make it as a real food, as a real meat. I champion awareness about ultra-processed food and particularly the mislabeling of the food in terms of sugar content and emulsifiers a lot.
Do you both believe in mock meat, or is anyone... Do you have like different thoughts about mock meat, or what's your take on mock meat versus yours?
I start?
Please.
Yeah, I absolutely believe in any food which consumer finds appealing, which makes them resemble the taste which they are longing for, but which is very favorable for the planet, which is sustainable. I would rather walk people out of the food choices which are either heavily industrially produced or heavily produced against the planet, like cattle-based or animal-based or even drudgery-based. I would rather prefer to walk out of them, and people should have a balanced meal, a protein-rich meal, or a balanced meal to build a lot of resilience in them. Particularly, my target segment, whenever I'm looking for, is kids and adolescent group, because this is the age, the formative age of your body. And if this is the age, like we are #1 in diabetes. Just imagine a country which is known for the sweets is #1 in diabetes. How is it possible? It is because not for the conventional sugars, it is because of the industrially prepared food. So I am a strong propagator of the food which is clean, which is nutrient, which is tasty, and which is easily available. The packaged food is definitely heavily processed. So too much of salt and sugar coated, and then industrial chemicals coated, preservatives coated, they are all processed food. So why alone? Why to pinpoint mock meat alone? It is like the whole shelf is processed food, and we are okay with it.
Is one worse than the other?
Well, it depends upon how mock meats are prepared. So industrially, we don't have a very big industrial segment, and nor we have enough data to say that this is the preparation of mock meat is heavily industrially laden, and it is better, worse than the normal cookies or the normal the potato wafers we get. We don't have enough data for that. So since mock meat is a nascent industry, it's a very fresh industry, we can make the course correction right now before we really grow up like a giant, and then it is difficult to come back. So if we set our foot right, if we make sure it is not like over processed, if we make sure it does not have too many industrial chemicals and shorter shelf life, it is fine, because I really don't want to see all of us standing at the corner where our short life versus food short life. We have to make a choice out of it. So it's better that we have a shorter food shelf life. At home also, we don't eat a food prepared on Sunday and then eating it on Saturday. We eat fresh. So what is the harm in eating the store-bought food, which is of a shorter shelf life? Your breads, shorter shelf life, no problem. Why do we have to have 15 days or 3 months or 6 months shelf life of it? We don't. We can actually make a course correction there.
So personally, I'm of the same opinion which ma'am said, but to add on to that, one should understand what is the demand of the consumer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Why this industry flourished, irrespective of the mock meat industry, but specific to the food that we eat right now. We do not eat the traditionally grown food as of now. Why did this industry flourish? Because the consumers wanted to have these specific taste activators, which made them consume this product regularly. Now, from that perspective, what Mock is trying to do is, it is trying to, as ma'am said, trying to correct that path or bringing in the correction in the system. What miscalculations or wrongdoings have been done by this industry, from the nutrient parameters, from how it impacts the food chain, how non-sustainable it is. Mock meat is trying to give out replacements or alternatives to that. And this is where the consumer has to be made more aware, and where programs like you will help us make the consumer aware of the importance of this meat, and then bring in the acceptance.
But you said the consumers demand that particular taste. Haven't we been made addicted to that particular taste? Is there a reason we're addicted to packet chips or biscuits?
I had thought a lot about it, that despite of the fact everybody know, every parent know, and every child knows that the food is bad, unhealthy. Why do we resort to it? The thing is the convenience part of it, the availability part of it. And the moment we find something which is dry, which is sanitized, hygienically packaged, and it is easily available at airports, at my transit points, at my college canteen, and it doesn't make my hands messy like my tiffin. I don't have to carry it in like extra luggage or an extra handbag. That is my choice to go. And that is what all of us are doing. Our tiny cakes, the muffin cakes, the cookies, everything you see, they exactly fall in this category. They are industrially packed, so that they are not hand touched very often. At least they are sealed unless the seal is broken. So you are at least assured of some safety. There are regulation in place. The regulation may not be speaking too much about the additives right now, but still they do come under regulation, and violation of it attracts penalty. So there you feel, okay, it's safe for me to go there rather than going to an open hawker. And then the best part for us is it is pocket friendly. 10 rupee, I get a very nice dry cookie packet, which helps me to sustain high on energy, fully laden with glucose. At least half a day I can just carry on if I have a packet of cookie with me. So whereas just imagine the amount of cumbersome process I have to go through if I have to get up in the morning, prepare my meal, put it in a dabba, carry it as extra luggage, then board a metro and then get onto my workplace, find a place to keep it, and then when I eat it, it's all messy again.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis just a dry pack of cookie.
You need to understand the consumer perspective of why the consumer is accepting it, apart from the taste readiness, or apart from how easy that is to handle. The best example is, if you can go back and look, I will not name the companies, how recently in Delhi itself, milk was found to be adulterated. It's a big brand.
Yeah.
But did it impact the consumer? No. If you go back a couple of years back, how processed food like noodles was affected.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did it impact? No. So you need to understand where consumers are actually accepting the product, apart from their readiness to accept a taste. So these are something which plays a very vital role in how companies or big manufacturers put in products on shelf, do the right marketing. And this is where I'm very open of that opinion, that the more we speak of how the mock industry is trying to bring out more sustainable ways of making meat or giving alternatives, the more acceptance we will have. And that is when there will be a shift from how we are eating currently, we are eating, and how we will eat after a couple of years.
Is there any alternative to what you mentioned, which is if you're traveling somewhere, the most readily, easily available option is a packet of chips or French fries or something like a packet of biscuits,
Yes.
as you mentioned. That is the most convenient, accessible option. What do you do if you don't want to resort to that? Because as you also said, preparing your own food or getting something that is freshly cooked or a hot meal, that might be harder, inconvenient, messy, and time consuming at the same time. So what do you do as a consumer if the only available option is something that is refined and ultra processed?
So, as a consumer, if you speak of, yes, ultra processed food is something which is budding up. And people like us who normally are traveling, we are in need of such products because we are unable to match that taste expectations again when you go abroad. So, ultra processed food does become an industry which helps us penetrate the mock meat concept or alternative meat concept into this whole ecosystem. But parallelly, it's a very long game because we need to understand the right taste, texture, and smell acceptance, apart from how it is being marketed and how it is being packed.
What do you mean by that?
So let me put it this way. I might go slightly off track. So for the last couple of years, the roadshow that we have done, we realized that there are 6 parameters of any consumer accepting any product, any food product. Number 1 is taste. Number 2 is texture. Number 3 is smell. Number 4 is nutritional value. Number 5 is the price. And number 6 is the quality of the product.
Is it in that order?
Not specifically that order.
Okay.
I'm giving you a randomness to that. So it basically goes how I remember it.
Yeah.
So if you speak at all those parameters, so one has to figure out each parameter should pass the acceptance of the consumer. So for alternative proteins manufacturers like us, we have to see each parameter specifically. And this is where I think alternative protein industry, from plant-based or animal-based, is working rigorously to find the right solutions.
We had essentially found out that we cannot do without palm oil over sodium addition, liquid glucose, and then added sugar apart from the sugar. If you just take any cookie, and I would urge all the consumers to not only flip the product just for the price, but for the label as well. First, it was always price. Then it was the triangle we started looking at, vegetarian, non-vegetarian. And now I seriously urge them to look at the nutrient label, because there you will find first what portion it is recommending. Like I was discussing with you, the children's cereal, you know, the way it is marketed, it is, you have a very famous Disney character placed there, and that television advertisement would say it is going to make you a champion or a Superman or Avenger or something, and then it is so heavily laden with sugar, the child will keep on eating it.
Doctors recommend not to use
the baby cereal.
Yeah, in fact, I have been championing it very vehemently that stop adding these logos on the kids' meal, because children just fall flat on that. They want it by all means. I'm telling that a child, just because we do not want to deprive him of anything, which is very, very well within the range of our pocket, we are pushing him or gifting him the gift of all these lifestyle diseases, high in sugar, high in salt, ultra processed. So when I say ultra processed, Shreya, I would just like to, just for the audience sake, I would like to tell you, ultra processed food, FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, has given a very simple definition of it, that it should have at least one ingredient which you do not find in your kitchen. At least one ingredient.
Isn't all of them in ultra processed food? All the ingredients that you don't find in your kitchen.
This is the moment of awakening, no? When you say it, you get that rice mix, a paratha mix, suppose, or poha masala, pick up anything, or biscuit. So you get on your kitchen shelf, you will get refined flour, you will get sugar, you will get oil. That is fine. You will get salt. That is fine. But are these only 4 ingredients? No. Everything else is what you don't find in a kitchen shelf.
What is that everything else?
Though emulsifiers, acidity regulators, then emulsifiers are too many, then you have liquid glucose, then palm oil. So all these things you don't find.
Why are each of those ingredients bad? Why are emulsifiers bad? Why are acidity regulators bad? Why are preservatives
is smoking bad?
Of course.
No.
Do you say no?
Is drinking alcohol bad? No. It depends on the amount of smoking and alcohol that you consume.
I would say even in moderation, both are bad.
And no, again, no. So
what's your take on that? Smoking and
Actually,
drinking alcohol?
we had been speaking on that. The nicotine, which causes addiction of sugar,
Yeah.
is the same nicotine which is used for removal, like de-addicting cigarettes. Sorry, did I say sugar? The nicotine which is used for addiction of cigarettes is the same nicotine you used for those patches.
To get out of it.
To get out of
Yeah.
it. So it is always that fine threshold you have to identify. And we talked about addiction, you can't just have one cookie and you're sorted.
Yeah.
It might
Apparently
not
you can
affect you so adversely,
Yeah.
but the whole pack and then the whole crate and then the
That's
soft
true.
drinks and
That's
then
true.
it just goes on and on.
Okay, coming back to moderation. Why do you say doing a little bit of that is not bad in tiny amounts and tiny quantities?
So being from a scientific origin, we do realize the importance of every ingredient that is added to anything that we eat or make. And there is a purpose of everything. From a nicotine perspective, nicotine not only, yes, there is an addiction parameter to it if it is overconsumed, but it behaves in the model of ROS, that is reactive oxygen species.
Reactive?
Oxygen species. So
Which is?
basically helps you clean your body.
Okay.
So these ingredients basically are external factors that help your body to clean negative entities from your body, but if taken in the right quantity. If you if you pass that quantity, it is bad for your body. So yes, everything is required in some quantities. And coming back to the ultra food model, why the concept of ultra food was brought into the system, it was basically to cut down the demand supply problems. When I speak of demand supply, it is with the increase in the number of population, the sources of proteins are diminishing. So there is a limited supply of proteins and nutrients, and at one side there is an increase in population. So how do you manage that?
But is ultra processed food the way to satisfy protein demand and satisfaction?
Actually, it started with the Industrial Revolution when miners were attracted more and more towards the city. So too many people and too less food. So they thought that food should be produced industrially. It should be very cheap. And it should be, for making a food cheap, the ingredients have to be cheap, right? And nutrition or not nutrition, that was never the criteria. It should be high on energy.
So just
that was
calorie
how-
intake.
Calorie
That's all we're
intake,
considering
yes.
right now.
So if people are energetic, they are going to go out and work in the field. And that is what the Industrial Revolution demanded initially. And then people shifting, people migrating, people just coming to, they're clustering into cities converting into metro, so on and so forth. And then the convenience factor came in, the food available readily packaged, so on and so forth. So it was just like a treadmill. We boarded once and it's difficult to get out now.
Are we still consuming the food that was meant for Industrial Revolution?
We have improvised a lot in terms of high sugar, high salt. We have made it not only for minors now, it is for kids, babies, for patients. The reach has gone far and wide.
And none of that is nutritious in any capacity.
I would not personally question the nutrition parameter, but I would say we have lost the reason of making industrialized food.
Yeah.
And in that whole process, we have lost why we are doing it. It is all now focused towards how you can increase how you can manage that demand supply, how you can make more in less time. If I take a very basic example from my industry, chickens are reared in poultry farms.
Yeah.
So you provide them antibiotics, you provide them a lot of hormones.
For faster growth as well,
faster
right?
growth and more mass.
Make them bulkier,
Make them
fatter.
bulky. Yeah. But in that whole process, you forget that they do not have the nutritional requirement or protein requirement that actually had to answer to. So this is where replacements are required.
And what happens to our bodies when we consume or eat a chicken that's consumed those antibiotics or those hormones?
Yeah, Shreya, I work a lot on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I apply all that into the food. So a very strong argument which comes to my table is when you want to test, let us say, the protein-rich plant, for example, moong bean, I want to test. So there are n number of varieties growing in India. It's an indigenous crop. So you're going to pick up those crops, you're going to test the proteins. Are you not killing the crops right away? And then it is a time-drawn process. So what I do is I use the data, I use computer informatics, I use digital technologies, not to kill the plant, but to see the perfect fit. Like I match the poultry egg the proteins of the poultry egg, and I see, okay, which plant has the similar type of proteins. And that is how I am able to conclude that, okay, this is my final fit. This would be my bouquet of putting it into ingredients. So far, industry had not been following this. In future, they would have to. There is no choice, because we are running out of resources, particularly fresh water,
Yes.
land. We are overburdened with heavy metals, toxins, industrial effluents. So getting clean food right from the resource is very, very difficult. So we have to place in technology at the right corner, so that our preliminary testing and screening is done on the computer, so that we just have a very small bouquet of raw material to be tested. So earlier we did not have this technology, and now we don't have enough resources, clean resources to begin with. So this has to be the way to go. And I'm very sure that with a lot of awareness coming up, and I use like LinkedIn platform like anything to write about, to create awareness about ultra processed food, about wrong labeling. Like I champion this wrong labeling. I did it in most of my service career in different parts of the world, that labeling has to be mandatory, and labeling has to be mandatory in terms of consumer readability. If a consumer cannot read, like suppose I give you an example, you pick up your favorite noodle brand, you turn it across, and then you find E27, E57.
Exactly, that's what I was asking about emulsifiers and acidity regulators, because I don't know what they mean and why they're harmful and what they do and what their role is in my food. I just read that.
And most of the time you can't even decipher.
Exactly.
So, but money can buy it, so we buy it. Right. Yeah. And time does not permit us to cook or read. So we just cook and eat very quickly. So I champion this globally, that labels has to be consumer readable. You can't just put some codes there and think that you have been transparent. That way it's a fraud. It's a labeling fraud. The next challenge which comes is labeling it for palm oil, like, because people are getting not only allergic, people are getting sensitive also. Heart patients should not be eating refined, should not be eating palm oil.
What's wrong with palm oil? Because it's in every processed food item, even cosmetics for that matter.
Yeah.
Very rampant.
Yeah.
What's wrong with palm oil?
So palm oil is basically used, it is a very cheap oil. So what you get in the bottle, let us say extra virgin olive oil, you would think that my money can buy the best on the planet, so I'm buying an extra virgin olive oil 2x, 3x, but 60%, 70% it is adulterated and catalytically cracked by palm oil just to have the bulk production, because extracting so much oil from olive would be way too expensive and industrially unsustainable. So you think you are really buying the pure quality. Now imagine this is on the higher bracket, extra virgin are on the higher bracket of cost. Somewhere you have a very low refined oil which is being sold, or unfiltered mustard oil which is being sold. So it is up to 80% which is palm oil, very poor in nutrition quality, very low smoking point, just burns very quickly, and it does more bad in the body than doing anything good. So, and this is very frequently used in our bakery products, whatever buns and breads and the cheese, buns and breads we use, the croissants we use, all made by palm oil. They don't add ghee, or they don't add...
That's true. And it's vegetable palmolene and other ways of putting it. It's never...
Vegetable palmolene is even one step dangerous, because the metal with which they crack is nickel. The whole industry of dalda ghee or the vanaspati ghee was walked out of India's kitchen because of nickel was found carcinogen, cancer inducing.
So, nickel in the oil?
Yeah, when you pass nickel through oil, it gets converted into ghee, the vanaspati ghee.
So it's how fast you make more, churn out more product out of the whole process line.
Yeah.
And this is something, so coming back to the whole query regarding sustainability. So I personally feel that yes, there are certain ground problems which we as consumers did not foresee, or we are unable to understand. And yes, as ma'am said, there are certain labelings, E7, E10 labelings. The regulatory bodies did expect the consumer to directly understand what the meaning is.
I still don't know what they mean.
So these are, to put it in a very simplified way, these are additives which are not natural in nature and added to the system so that it can be more stable, and it has a life. The food has a life.
So preservatives of sorts, just to increase the shelf life.
Increase the shelf life, and how it can be more taste acceptable to the consumer. So there are products which, while you make them, you need to add certain additives to the whole process of making that product. So these are certain acceptance ready ingredients that are added to give you the right taste for accepting the product. So, and if you speak of ultra food, processed food industry, or traditional meat, to put it on a shelf for that. So, what alternative protein companies are trying to do is they are trying to correct this path. And what regulators, now coming back to how India and other countries are working on these lines, Indian regulators are very specific to how it is going to happen because they have done certain wrongdoings in the whole process of making the right policy. Let me take an example. If you speak of supplementary protein, what we are making is alternative to proteins.
What do you mean supplementary protein?
Alternative to proteins, any sort of alternative protein.
Yeah.
When you speak of protein supplements that are being consumed, there is no regulatory body or regulatory format to take charge of what is the source of these proteins or what are the traceabilities of these proteins. Are these chemically made? Are these synthetic? Or are these natural extracts? The Indian government does realize this concerns, and that is why when you ask me what is the regulatory status, what is the policy status, why India is behind, Singapore did a yes, US did a yes, India is trying to correct that path.
We're talking about accepting mock meat or
general, to be very specific, to be very generic to all sorts of food products out there.
Okay.
And mock meat is one of the parameters to that. But before we bring in mock meat to shelf for acceptance or for policy acceptance, you need to correct the whole path. You need to do one-on-one corrections. Milk was one of the corrections that was done. So this is
in what way?
How it is being labeled, how the consumer reads it or accepts it, how it is being marketed. So you have to do corrections on all aspects to make it more consumer friendly, at the same time more quality centric and more traceability to the product.
What does that look like? What is that path correction?
With respect to timeline?
With timeline, but also labeling and also making it easier for the consumer to understand what is it that we're actually eating. What are those policy corrections or labeling changes? What does that look like?
So the first policy correction which could be observed from a very generic view is how government has basically merged various departments. So testing department is now separate. Food labeling department is now separate. Drug discovery department is now separate. So, and they have their defined areas of working. They have their defined notions. So these are some ground corrections that are being done. And now there are dashboards where you can just, as a consumer, go and see if my product follows these criteria or not. 1 year back, down the line, it was not there. Now there are dashboards to understand the whole process and get a traceability of that product. And when I don't know if I mentioned or not, only 5 to 7% of the industry is regulated through FSSAI. That is the current data. Now, if they bring in more corrections to it, the more regulations are happening, the more FSSAI is given power to regulate the whole food industry, the more traceability comes into the picture. The more traceability brings in how the product is being made. So it is step by step going back to the process of how ingredients are added. What is the source of those ingredients? That takes charge of the correction that can be done.
So much so, just to add to what Siddharth said, there is a very interesting thing when everybody feels that, okay, if my salary and my pocket permits, I would like to buy organic food. Okay. So the interesting example is when we say organic atta, and if you carefully look at the label, it says organically produced. It never says organically processed, because
what's the difference?
The burden goes on the farmer. He is not allowed to use any pesticides. There is a tiny catch to it that if his neighbor is using pesticide, the aerosol will come to him, like the air would come, and there is no restriction to it. But for the discussion's sake, he's not allowed to use pesticide if he subscribed to the organic chain. But the moment the industry buy that wheat from him, convert it into atta, and then they add bleaching, then they add preservative, because your home ground gehu will get soiled up maximum in a month. Those big stacks of atta you would find in the superstores.
So even if it says organically produced, it's always not organic.
No, it will always say organically produced, never organically processed.
Is brown bread actually brown bread?
What is brown bread?
Like the brown bread, which they call it.
Is it actually brown bread? It is not actually brown bread. It is normal wheat bread where brown color is added to it. So you feel you are eating atta bread, but it is not actually atta bread.
And interestingly, if you make chapati out of atta, it is white. How can bread be brown? So there are certain things which consumer need to question. The awareness has to be at a very high level, at the very basic level.
So brown bread is not healthier than white bread?
I'm not questioning why is brown bread healthier or not.
Okay.
Is it healthier?
It is healthier. Yes, it is healthier
The
because
color
of
we are
certain
talking about.
factors.
Yeah.
Okay.
But is the brown bread that you currently consume, is it actually brown bread by origin? So it all boils down to how it is labeled, how the
Yes.
packaging is done.
And how misguiding it could be.
Yeah.
Even if you're not misguided, for example, I know that a packet of noodles, it's bad, it's fried, it's ultra processed, it's got all of the additives that you mentioned. As a consumer, why does it still not stop me from making that packet of noodles and still eating that, knowing that the packet of chips is bad or the packet of, biscuits is bad? Why
Because
does
there are two things.
that disconnect not come in?
Shreya, one is the convenience. Second is the lack of alternatives. We don't have alternatives. I'll just give you one small example. There was a very that stage, I guess we all have seen in our few years in our youth, that people were addicted to this particular soft drink, black drink,
Yeah.
and along with the meals, they used to eat it, and it used to be the pride symbol of youth, particularly at that time. And then very quickly, after a long time, youth started getting diabetics, and there was some awareness level raised. And now what we have alternates, like we have nariyal pani in Superstore, we have fruit juices in Superstore,
Kombucha
we have
has made a
lassi in
comeback.
Superstore, right? Earlier, if you want to have a sealed drink, it only had to be that black drink.
That's
right?
true.
And then certain colors, orange, white, etc., green, they all came. But then high sugar, bubbly drinks were the only options. But because consumer demanded that, no, we don't want to eat this, we don't want to have this, we want something like, then, those coffee, cold coffee, processed coffee started coming up. So now if you step at airport, those W.H. Smith shop, you would find those black drinks are very less. They're just not dominating that shelf. You have fruit juices, the pulp included fruit juices, you have coconut water, you have crystal water, like bubbled water. So now options are increasing.
Right.
So lack of availability makes us just, there's nothing else I can do and I need convenience. So
Plus
be it.
awareness. Plus awareness.
Yes.
Because there is no awareness. Products are out there. They have been there for ages. But because there was no awareness, there was no market.
No market.
So yes, awareness plays a very vital role. And the marketing strategies play a very vital role. If Shah Rukh Khan promotes a product which is very organic and very healthy, people will buy it. But if he's not promoting it, there are very low chances that it will be on the first row of the shelf in a supermall.
So it's the endorsement,
Yes.
the way it's labeled,
Yes.
lack of regulations, and
Yes.
also our taste preferences.
Yes.
In fact, Shreya, you can always refer to a very, once in 100-year episode, which we all witnessed. That was the market upsurge of certain things during COVID era.
Yes.
Nobody talks about those immunomodulating drinks, those immunity kadas and all. But at that time, you could buy it and trade in lieu of gold. They were like so costly. They were everywhere, and you just wanted to have them. And because awareness was so high, right? Nobody bothered to buy a bottle of soft drink at that time.
Yes.
Everybody wanted to buy that
kada.
kada.
And I personally feel that because of COVID and that 1.5 years of understanding one's own survival, one was able to figure out or one was trying to find out alternatives that can be more healthier. And one started to realize that how the food chain plays a very vital role in the whole process. And I think COVID has become a very pivotal stage for how alternative proteins have been pushed in the market and how they are getting exposed or how they are getting accepted by the market.
How cool. Okay, first off, what is the difference between cultivated meat and mock meat?
Yeah, mock meat. Mock meat is a generic term. Mock per se means alternative or something which is imitating the original food, original meat. Right now, when we are talking of mock meat, but the two segments under mock meat are alternative meat and plant-based meat. So plant-based meat do not have any animal presence, like they are just extracted from plants, but they are processed. They're not ultra processed, but then you have to undertake certain processing steps for them. Whereas cellular meat is like you draw the cell from the animal and then grow it in the lab. So that is cruelty free, but animal meat. Whereas plant-based is totally plant-based meat. A common example is our soya vadi and jackfruit. So they do not have any animal component.
And for
to
a
it.
common example for cultivated meat is clear meat.
It's
Let me
clear
put it
meat.
this way.
I like
Yes.
that placement.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? But is cultivated meat alternative protein in that sense?
These are certain labels that we use to basically convince ourselves and the audience to be very specific. And alternative proteins, yes, as ma'am rightly said, it is defined into two parameters, the plant-based and the animal-based origin. Yes, I do agree to that. And animal-based, because of its origin and because of the process, is is actually 100% meat. It's actually raw meat made without killing of animals. And plant-based is basically to replicate the whole expectations of no killing,
Texture.
no animal texture, and likewise, or the juiciness. For us, it is raw meat. The process of making it is different. And the vision that we personally perceive is that we are eating a chicken nugget made from a chicken which is just sitting next to us. So to give you a visualization how it
Sitting
looks.
next to you, yes.
So this is where the borderline of difference between mock meat and cultivated meat stands.
Would you like to run us through the process of how cultivated meat is processed or produced?
Great. So cultivated meat, when you speak of, it is basically taking cells from an animal without killing it in a model of a biopsy, taking a biopsy, taking certain number of cells from that region which we want to eat. Let me take an example of muscle. So in our case, speaking of chicken specifically, we take chicken muscle cells in a biopsy model. Those biopsies are then cultured or grown in lab. All cell types are separated. So you look for specific cells that are required to make meat. You identify those cells in a specific format of growing these cells, providing the right cell growth media or nutrition to these cells so that they can multiply and you create a mass of cell.
How do you grow those cells from the small quantity of cells
So
that you get?
cells independently have a thought process of multiplying and reproducing. The reproduction or multiplication is basically providing them the right source of nutrition.
What do you feed those cells?
In our case, it is cell growth media, and I'm glad you're more pushing towards that because this is something that alternative protein from a cultivated meat we are trying to resolve. Because alternative protein from a cultivated meat industry, one portion is meat. So there are 4 pillars basically to the whole process of making meat and making it consumer acceptable. One is the cell type being used to make that meat. Another is the cell growth media, how it is provided to the cells so that they can multiply in a particular time. And third is the methodology applied. And fourth is the licensing or the marketing strategy.
Got it.
Now, if you speak of these 4 parameters, the 2 parameters, the number 1 is the cell line being used, cells being used, and the number 2, the cell growth media being used. They play a very vital role in how the end product will look like.
What is cell growth media? Sorry.
So
I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to learn so much from you today.
I'm glad you're asking this today. Cell growth media is basically a nutrient broth provided to any cell so that it can multiply. The major component, one being cell lines, cells we use to make meat, and another being cell growth media. Now, this cell growth media is basically the source of energy for cells to multiply or divide. Okay. Now, this cell growth media, traditionally speaking, is used or made from fetal bovine serum. That is the fetal bovine serum.
What is that?
That is the serum from the blood of the fetus.
Of calf.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we use that we use that for growth.
For cell growth. Irrespective of the application of the industry. When you speak of cell growth, this cell growth industry is not only associated to food, it is now associated to pharmaceutical industries, to drug discoveries, and to likewise, to vaccine production and likewise. So directly or indirectly, from the perspective of food, there are other perspectives also that are involved in killing of animals or in mass production of, you would say, factory farms, of these factory farms.
Right.
Where these calves or these hens or these chickens or these pigs are injected with numerous amounts of hormones and antibiotics so that you could get more quantity and make them more bulky.
Right.
Now, coming back to cultivated meat, this cell growth media plays a very vital role in how the cells, the originating start point for this meat, multiplies, and how these cells ultimately take the required shape and texture that is required for any meat to look like. And when you speak at what this industry is trying to do is, it has not only resolved the way of how biopsies can be taken, how it can be made more kill-free, but how this cell growth media can be replaced with more sustainable ways of making meat.
Without using bovine serum?
Without using bovine serum.
But to use bovine serum, would you have to kill the animal? You get it after?
Yes. For using bovine serum, the process is I would not go deep dive into that, but the process is very bad.
It sounds gruesome to begin with, even the name sounds.
It is. And what this industry is trying to do is they replace fetal bovine serum with growth factors. Again.
Which are?
Which are synthetically produced or chemically produced. But if you look at the sustainability perspective, nutritional value perspective, still it does not suffice to the whole vision of the cultivated meat industry. And this is something where Clear Meat has already found out a solution. That is, we make proteins, cell growth media extracts from plant resources. So we basically take plants, extract certain proteins, and fed these cells with the same proteins that are required for them to multiply. And this makes our model 100% kill-free. So there is no fetal bovine serum, there are no antibiotics, there are no hormones, additional hormones or growth hormones or chemically synthesized hormones that are used to make these cells or let these cells multiply.
What's your take on cultivated meat?
I actually don't work on that area. I work on plant-based meat, but I tell you, it would be a lot more sustainable than raising a whole animal. And then, as I said, 9 calories you feed to get 1 calorie out of a chicken.
Yeah.
And there you have a system where you can just inject out a couple of cells. You see the health of the cell. Whereas in the other case, even if the chicken is not well, you would just slaughter it and pack it, and you don't know if the chicken was well or not well. But here you have full control over the quality of meat which you are producing. So it is going to be environment friendly, sustainable, and I think the taste, juiciness, springiness, these factors, they come in as we walk on the road. Day one, nothing can be created like that. So
does it taste the same to the chicken nuggets that you make today?
Yes, it tastes
they
the same.
Taste the same?
Yes, we have been doing tasting events with various ministers, not only in India but outside India. And Gulf has been something which has closely been monitoring the whole growth of this industry.
Okay.
And you will be surprised, last year, we got a project from Gulf countries to do camel meat.
So are you telling me like it's a magic lab where you can just recreate cells of...
It's not a magic lab. It is basically how you work on cells and how you provide them the right energy
Nutrition.
for them to multiply. Yeah. And so chicken being one format. So as I was telling you, we got an offer. I would not say an offer, a project problem statement that they needed camel meat. But again, the cruelty-free or guilt-free parameter was said to do that. And Gulf, being very pro to sustainability in the recent times, is pushing for such technologies to be put on shelf. And this is where what we have been working in Clear Meat, we identified the POC that is required to make camel meat specifically. Yes, it would not be of the same texture and shape that one sees, but it still is able to match the production line or replace the killing of camel. Camel being one aspect from an international perspective, beef being another aspect. If you look at India only, India has been identified as a vegetarian country since ages.
Yeah.
But if you look at the data how India eats, 69% of Indians are non-vegetarian by their
69%.
choice. 69% are non-vegetarian. If you look at this data specifically, ideally for a non-vegetarian, it would be okay. In India, people might be eating mutton, chicken and fish. But the story is totally different. People prefer delicacies. I would not name them, but there are e-commerce websites with whom we did small data analysis, and we found that 40 to 50% requirements are delicacies.
What do you mean by delicacies?
These are crabs, these are shrimps, these are different types of beef.
meats.
Right.
So
that are not rooted in our culture.
That are not rooted in our culture, right?
Okay.
Or maybe very specific, like coastals would eat these, but
Yeah.
not the heartland or not the mainland people.
Okay,
would
so
eat.
not the mainstream.
Yeah.
No, I would differ here because
Okay.
the data shows something else.
So you were talking about
So I was
data.
talking about the data. The data basically shows that from Indians prefer delicacies. 30 to 40% Indians prefer delicacies. So chicken, mutton, fish being the traditional way of looking meat. This data shows a different perspective. And if you look at how Indians eat, the current generation Z, Y, and X, whatever we call them, we might be vegetarians at home, but outside our homes, we are regularly eating non-vegetarian products. That's something because of socialism, or that is something that is our personal choice, and we do not want to alienate ourselves from our traditional roots. People do eat meat outside their houses. If you look at these data, this industry is able to solve that problem. Because
Cultivated meat
industry is able to solve that problem because it is able to identify these delicacies and makes meat specifically to these demands.
By delicacies, you mean crabs
and likewise
shrimp, as you mentioned.
Yes, but speaking of these delicacies, there is a silent market behind this, and for us, it is something which is emerging, and it is very difficult for us to make those FMCG players respond to those queries because this can only be achieved once you have the product on shelf. See, if you look at how plant-based is perceived globally and in India or Asia specifically, soya chap has been in our kitchens now.
Yes.
And soya-based products or alternatives to plants are now being perceived in the US or UK as alternatives. Yeah. And they are now part of the McDonald's chain or the KFC chain.
That's true.
But soya for India is something which is out there. One can go outside and make it at their own homes. So you need to understand the market perception that is building. And there is also analysis for 2045, a global analysis for 2045 that says that by the end of 2045, a plate of any person will look like 20% being traditional way of eating meat, 30 to 40% being lab grown or cultivated meat, and rest being all these plant alternatives. So there will be a demand for all this, but at the same time, the reason for that demand, one reason would be no killing, that's a guilt-free meat. Another would be sustainability. So there are various parameters that are associated with this whole industry of alternative protein and lab-grown cultivated meat industry.
Coming back to regulations, is it legal in India to sell cultivated meat?
As of now, no. India is working hard to understand the whole process, and this I personally believe is the right way of thinking around it. So when you speak of India specifically, and you look at how globally countries have accepted cultivated meat, be it Singapore and US, which have already placed the right policies to make it available and are available on restaurants, India has taken a different stance. India is trying to understand the whole process of making meat, from traceability to how the waste is generated and how that waste is managed. So India is trying to make a food loop out of it. Yeah. And I personally feel that apart from these food loop and apart from understanding the whole process, India is taking the right steps because it has to ultimately control the whole demand supply chain. We as a manufacturer do feel that from the Make in India initiatives, till the time these policies are not in place, because at Clear Meat, again, we see ourselves as the suppliers of lab-grown or cultivated meat to the globe. So once we have these policies in place, we will be able to cater to the demand more strongly, and we will be able to achieve the targets when it comes to increase in the industrial scale or make more money out of it. Speaking of these policies specifically, India is also worried about how the food looks like. Is it GMO or non-GMO by nature, genetically modified or non-genetically modified? Right. And this is something which places India on a very different roadmap. The reason for putting this is most of these foods, the food items that we have normally, because of there is no traceability, because of the amount of processing that is involved, the chances of having zoonotic diseases or any sort of diseases are high. COVID was one of the reasons. COVID also happened because of food, if you see specifically. I'm not going on blaming any country, but how viruses were not controlled in one specific region and the food was not processed properly, it was able to enter or penetrate the whole food chain and impacted the whole globe.
So, animal-borne.
So you have to realize that genetically modified food products and non-genetically modified food products is one of the key parameters that India also keeps in touch. And this is where I think India is slowly, steadily moving ahead.
Speaking of food security, which is something that we touched upon briefly, to feed a country of 1.4 billion people, 1.5 billion people, what role does plant protein, alternative protein, and cultivated meat, what role do these three play in our food security and feeding such a huge population?
I guess it's not like one over another. It's like as many alternates we can create, because looking to the way the tempo is really high on moving something which is planet favorable. Yeah. Now even schools are running those drive on sustainability, educating enough. And for everything, particularly with plastics, the awareness has come a long way. People don't want plastic bottles anymore. They prefer glass, or they carry on their own bottle, tiny bottles, big bottles. Recyclable plastic is taking a big headway. So that awareness is now there. It is there for several things which can be environmental friendly. And when it comes to food, right now, people are not talking and not much aware about the industrially processed food, but they are definitely aware about raising an animal for a certain number of years is very expensive. It is like very resource driven, and then suddenly you slaughter it. That is also the whole slaughtering to meat packaging process is another level of resource intensity. So people are moving to find more alternates, cleaner food, which is easy to digest.
Yeah.
And that also somehow matches with the lifestyle everybody is onto. Everybody is onto gadgets, more sitting hours. So the digesting of a very complex protein, like an animal protein, is becoming very difficult. And the problems like high cholesterol and all are seeping in at a very young age. So it is, I'm very sure, sooner than we realize, alternative protein would be a demand which would be created by the consumers themselves. And I'm very sure it would just be like alone plant-based would cover it all, or alone cell-based or alone lab-grown would cover it all.
Yeah.
It has to be a mix of all.
To add on to that, when you speak of the demand, we already are having a huge demand from upper middle classes and upper class consumers who want to have this product on shelf. So if you speak of the number of calls we get in on our offices, almost every day we have calls of distributors who are asking for licenses. So that gives you a perspective that yes, as ma'am rightly said, consumers are getting aware of the concept and the demand will come.
Right.
This is only the FMCG players that have to play a vital role in marketing of the product.
Can I ask, since we're both vegan, is cultivated meat vegan or vegetarian? Because it doesn't involve killing of the animal.
So I would say that it is not vegan. It is clean. It may be healthier. I don't have the data on that.
Is it healthier?
But I don't have the data on
Okay,
that.
first we'll
just
talk about
confessing
the
it,
whole
honestly.
vegetarian vegan aspect, and then I want to know about the nutrition and the health
Yeah.
aspect of cultivated meat as well.
So it is meat. And yes, the target audience will always remain hardcore non-vegetarians.
Okay.
Vegan people will never be our target audience, and this is something which we have a clear thought on it, because this is made from cells. Meat is always made from cells, and this is and we also are of the opinion that it will ultimately be labeled as meat.
Okay.
So the confusion in the whole arena regarding being vegan food or vegetarian food or non-vegetarian food, let me put it straight, it is hardcore non-vegetarian food. We should be worried about the process of making meat and how more food products can be put on shelf and how this can replace the traditional way of eating meat. So yeah.
Tell me about the health and nutrition.
So like as a
of
vegan,
cultivated
I
meat.
think that if I'm extracting milk from animal or honey from bees,
Yeah.
I don't consume it as a vegan, nor I take bread because it is yeast and again microbes. That is like a little extreme, but some people consume bread. I feel that cellular meat is something which is animal driven, animal origin, and honestly, they don't hide it. They clearly say that.
Yeah.
That is not even the issue to switch it from animal to plant. Nutrition wise, we are yet to have two very important parameters on that. First and foremost, how pre-pan nutrition, how much pre-pan nutrition it is able to restore after processing, and how much post-pan. When I say pre-pan or post-pan, is like when we heat the protein, it gets denatured, a lot of it. So even your egg or any food product you pick up, the data which is given on the label, that is the protein percentage so much so, it is mostly pre-pan. The moment you heat it, the protein gets denatured. And
What do you mean by denatured?
denatured means it is not the protein anymore. It
Degraded.
at higher
It loses
temperature,
its shape
it
and
gets
Loses
degraded.
its shape.
shape.
But
Yeah.
it's
The
not the
protein.
protein that gets lost.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you one thing. Like you eat egg for albumin, okay? The white protein, the egg white is for albumin. After certain temperature, albumin opens up the bonds and it is no more albumin. It is something like I break the cup, it is no more the same cup.
Right.
If I have to reinvent it, it is no more the same cup. So when it is into certain combination, it forms albumin protein.
Okay.
Or the moment I change that because of higher temperature or pH, either acid or base, so it changes its structure. Then it transforms itself into another protein.
Understood.
So how much is that another protein, after pan, after heating, is compatible with my body? So that is one thing which I would be watching very closely, both for plant and cell-based meats, because ultimately it is bioavailability of the protein which matters. We are eating protein to get our body fulfilled with that protein. But if something happens, like, okay, let us say the protein has changed altogether, my body doesn't recognize it, my body just bypasses certain things. So that is not the protein, or possibly that would be the time we need to make course corrections.
I am glad that people are questioning the whole nutritional parameter of cultivated meat because ultimately it will be labeled as meat. So we need to understand it is also a meat, but does not involve any killing. Now, because it is meat without any killing and it is made in a very controlled environment, or you can regulate each step of it, you are able to take charge of the whole nutritional value or the whole expectation value when it comes to protein, what type of proteins it has, what type of ingredients it has, and how it can be eaten, and what will be the pre-pan and post-pan parameters. That basically gives it an edge as compared to the traditional meat, because for a traditional meat you are unaware of the hormones, the antibiotics used, the types of additives added while the process is happening. But here from day one you are able to identify, because there are very limited additions done, so you're able to take
So there's no antibiotics, there's
There is no
nothing added to
there is nothing
cultivated
added. So it
meat.
is more healthier. I
Right.
would not comment on the nutritional value, but it is more healthier.
Or rather cleaner.
Yeah, cleaner and healthier.
Yeah.
Speaking of the nutritional value,
Yes, coming
that,
back to the protein intake.
protein and nutritional value, it will always be the same because the source is same.
Got it.
The only difference is there was no killing.
Yeah.
The source is same.
Because the chicken is also eating plants, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, that's how chickens
Draws its
produce
nutrition. Yes.
protein, I guess. So if
Yeah.
you're feeding the plant extract that doesn't come from bovine serum,
Yes.
you're feeding that same amount of the same nutrition.
I will not put it this way. I will make it slightly technical.
Yeah.
So it is ideally. Do stop me if I go way beyond science.
Oh, I will, trust me. You know I'm going to ask questions.
So if you specifically ask the process, cells require certain specific proteins or activators to multiply. So what we do is we provide these activators from plant extracts so that they can multiply.
Got
That is the whole thought process.
Yeah.
And during that process of survival and multiplication, so these are cells which are made up of proteins. And this is the proteins that we eat. It is not something that chicken will always have these proteins. These are chicken cells. They are made from these cells which have these proteins. It is not, okay, today chicken number 1 had a fight with chicken number 2, so chicken 1 stopped making that protein. It does not go that way. These are chicken cells which always make chicken cell type specific proteins. So that is what we eat. So for a process that involves cultivated meat, because there is no killing of animals, we are able to churn out the process of the same protein expectation in a controlled environment and parallelly save animals. And if you speak at what we have done in the last couple of years, as I was telling you, we have started making 5 kilograms of meat every month.
5 kilograms
of this lab-grown meat or cultivated meat or cultured meat or meat itself.
Yeah.
In every month since last couple of years. In these couple of years, we have been able to save approximately 150 plus cows, because there was no fetal bovine serum involved. So 150 plus cows have been saved. So apart from saving 150 plus cows, we have been able to reduce or replace 42 metric tons of greenhouse emissions. So this is the impact. Then in a short span of 1.5 years of making only 3 to 5 kgs every month, we have been able to achieve. So not only from a sustainability perspective, how cultivated meat will impact the whole industry, but how protein concentric or nutritious and no disease or no killing parameters are associated with this industry.
I want to ask this about both cultivated meat and plant-based protein, which is, everyone thinks that it's fake, it's processed, it's something that is not natural, and then ultimately something that is not good for you or healthy. Same argument, lab-grown diamonds, for example, people think that it's fake, and even the word mock meat means that it implies that it's mocking something. Would you like to comment on the inauthenticity or the fakeness or the artificiality that is associated with both cultivated meat and plant-based protein?
Shreya, we have to understand one thing, that there is a huge difference between food being processed and food being ultra-processed. So if you have to have food on the store shelf, and if you want the comfort of carrying and storing of it, then processing is required. Otherwise, the shorter shelf life would waste more food than rather consuming it. We know at home, if we just make a bowl of dal, and then in summers by evening it is just unfit for consumption.
Yeah.
Right? So that is wastage of food. So when you process it, like you keep it in fridge, or maybe you add a little bit of oil or something, then you can consume it for next day as well. So that is processing in a very, very crude way. Industrially processing
At a home level, like
at a home level,
Yeah.
yes. So when you have mass scale production to feed big populations, processing is required. Two things which we have to be very particular about, even in processing, what exactly is going into it. So there comes labeling. So my whole insistence on clean label, on genuine label, on transparent labeling effort is let the consumer know what are they signing up for. If they still want to buy it, let them do it. But at least those who don't want to buy it, don't fake them into it. Then faking up of meat, as far as I tell you, how plant meats are made. We take plants which are already at a stage where they have enough proteins, particularly at the pre-germination stage. We soak them, and then there is a lot of protein which is accumulated, and then through a process, either raising the pH or raising the temperature. Even raising the temperature is a process. So when you set a curd, it is also a process. You are adulterating it with some culture. So we raise the temperature, or we change the pH. We extract the protein from rest of the elements, and then we add spices, or then we add the agents which give the texture, shape, longevity, springiness to it. So far it is okay. Ultra processed is not good, because it is always adding above the permissible level, above the age group level, the ingredients which our body cannot tolerate. It is you can very well assume that a bottle of a black drink, a favorite black drink, contains 16 spoons of sugar. Now, if somebody is taking, let us say, 15 black drinks in a month, so you just imagine the multiplied effect of it, and that is not the only source of sugar he must be taking.
Absolutely.
But he doesn't know about it.
Ketchup, bread.
Yeah, he doesn't know that his black
Food
drink
drinks.
contains so much of sugar, which
Yeah.
is not even required by the body. So that early diabetes set in. But then he didn't sign up for. What he signed up for was a favorite black effervescent drink.
That's true.
So this is how people get misguided into wrong. And then, I was speaking to you a little while ago, we are very proud of our demographic dividend in terms of a youth dynamic country. Demographically, we are a very young country. But this young country will very fast translate into a liable country, because we don't have enough resilience. Our people are diabetic. Their tolerance to diseases, to climatic changes, to weather parameters is going lesser and lesser. Why? Because what we are consuming is something which is filling our stomach, not giving us enough nutrition. And filling our stomach is also I would say it is a misguided effect. We are consuming something which is just giving us a shot of energy.
For a short time, temporarily as well.
Yeah, a spike, and we feel that we are energetic enough. We don't need the whole platter of meal. A snack or a bun or a junk food would just do with us. And at the end of the day, body doesn't run on junk food. It needs proper balanced meal. And that is what is running out of our platter very quickly. Plant meats is basically extracting of plant proteins, and then more effort goes in giving it a shape. The desirable shape. It can be a patty shape, it can be a fillet, like fish we are working on, it can be a fillet, or it can be a nugget, whatever the consumer demands. And then retaining it for certain number of days, 50 days, 60 days, as per the FSSAI norms. I would still say that I'm very closely monitoring the pre-pan and post-pan proteins and the bioavailability, because right now the industry itself is very nascent. We don't have a data of 50 years, 60 years. Soy and jackfruit we had been using, but it is not industrially processed. So industrially processed meat, we don't have enough data. We don't have a vulnerable population who's consuming it. Once we get enough data, we would be in a fairly good position to keep a standpoint that do we need to make course correction, or do we just go ahead with it? This is so good. So, but right now, ultra processed food or ultra processed meat is something we should be watching out for, but food needs to be processed. That is for sure.
But isn't meat processed as well? As you discussed,
The red
chicken, for
meat?
example, there are antibiotics and hormones in chicken as well. So isn't that processed, and that's not completely natural either? So why do we go after cultivated meat or alternative protein?
The real meat, I tell you, the animal meat is treated with nitrates. those are, and that is specifically added to give that pinkish color of meat. And when it is frozen stored, when it is stored in the shelf, any day old, we would just pick it up, not realizing how old it is because of that pinkish color. And that pinkish color, you see a dead animal, the meat doesn't remain pink for so long. It gets oxidized. It turns brown to black. Then how come the store meat is so pink for such a long time? Because of addition of nitrates. And those things, if they are brought into the synthetic products, or they are brought into the processed food, then we are actually carrying on the hazards to these type of food which are aimed to be good, which are aimed to be clean. But if to restore, if we are bringing it all, then as I'm saying it again, we need a course correction here. We need enough data. Again, there is not enough data. But then here artificial intelligence plays a very big role, because if I want to test the shelf life, if I just want to know how much more my meat will long, the plant-based or animal, the cellular-based, how much more it is going to long. So instead of really developing a meat and then putting it out on the shelf and then testing it daily, I can actually compute an algorithm and just do it. So it is very quickly, it is very precise, and it is just going to help me do the correction very quickly. So that is what is the modern technology. I would rather say it's going to be armed with the parallel technologies, claiming food to be safer than ever.
And I also believe on the same lines, but one needs to understand the whole thought process of mock meat or cultivated meat, because I am not against the plant-based industry, but I feel the labeling has been put forth in a very bad manner. Because of that, there have been many miscommunications with respect to how this product would get accepted at the end of the day. Labeling plant-based meat as plant-based meat, I am personally not of that opinion, because it is not meat. Ultimately, it will boil down to being a mock meat and will have no acceptance. Labeling it as a plant alternative to meat makes, for me, I might have a different way of thinking, a slight better strategy. Again, for cultivated meat, labeling it as, again, mock does not suit the kitty, because it is meat made in a different way. If you speak of at meat, it is basically pool of cells which have an animal origin. Now, these pool of cells, either it can be through killing or no killing. So I'm again and again coming to the whole thought process that it is meat. It is still meat, but there is no killing of animals. You are able to take charge or control of the whole process of meat. And that is why I feel the mock meat industry labeling, cultivated meat industry labeling needs to do certain corrections before it gets accepted by the masses.
Speaking of eggs, you've worked on a vegan egg prototype, if I'm not wrong. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah, actually, when I came back to India, I saw that people have a lot of affinity and a lot of liking for their dals. You know, everybody whom you ask about protein, they would immediately give you three answers: soy, dal, and milk. You know, that was very consistent. But then I also saw that there was this tagline attached to dal, that dal roti, like, you know, poor man's meal, or maybe
I love dal roti.
of course we do. And dal roti is the monotonous ghar ka khana and all. So since I research on food, and
this is the only dish that I normally have whenever we are abroad, because it gives you the feeling of being at home.
Yeah, it just, it's so fulfilling. But generally, if you ask the youth, they would just say, always dal roti, give us something else. You know, they're always attracted towards junk and all. So I thought that you know, this I have taken it from my dad when he says that there is always a better way to do things. So I thought that when there is dal, and when there is in many families, if not the whole, but at least in certain generations, people don't eat meat at all. Like grannies and all won't eat meat, and maybe youngsters would eat. And in some families, they are totally vegetarian. So I thought, why not to evolve this dal, you know, our dear own dal, a rich source of protein. And then this dal is so good for planet. I mean, it is so good for soil. It has, it just replenishes soil. It helps to nitrogen fix the soil, the atmospheric nitrogen. It makes the soil more fertilized.
I don't know dal could do all of that.
Yeah, no, the legume plants, they have certain bacteria in their roots, and that is how they fix the atmospheric nitrogen. They provide more nitrogen. Alternate to this natural nitrogen is urea. So urea pollutes our water because most of the time it is just washed off. But this is something naturally, quietly, a factory is running inside the soil and we don't even know. So this dal is very positive. It is very green and very positive to the environment. Then when the leaves are fed to the cattle, they don't get synthetic food to eat. They like the juice, the sweetness in the dal. So overall, it is a complete package for the environment. So why not? I thought, let's make something which is tasty also. If dal is really a deterrence on the dinner table, let us bring it back. So I started screening the dals which were high in nutrition, and then I came across certain dals, but then at the same time they were high in carbohydrates as well, because in nature nothing comes as a single unit, so it's always a package. So then I also wanted to see that egg is the food item which is sitting on the fence. You have flexitarians who would eat egg, you have eggitarians, you have vegetarians, and you have non-vegetarians.
You also have vegetarians who would eat egg as long as they can't see the egg.
They can't see the egg.
Pastries, pancakes,
Absolutely,
breads.
yes.
Most of the vegetarians are not aware that eggs are being used for making cakes and
True.
pastries.
Yeah,
And
even
then-
if they know it, as long as they can't see it, it's almost that disconnect that they're okay with.
And then
I don't know what class of vegetarians.
and then our nutrient supplements, our shampoos, egg is like always sitting on the fence. People are like, okay, we are okay with it.
Yeah.
So I thought that possibly naming it, preparing something like egg would make it more acceptable. So egg was the first choice, because for a pure vegetarian, the slice of meat or a jerky would not be very pleasing to accept on the table. So egg is something people would do. So I started with egg. I started extracting the proteins, and then once I found what protein is in the egg, which makes egg an egg, and that protein was albumin, the white of the protein.
What is albumin, if you would like to break that down?
There are different types of protein. Like for hair, we have keratin.
Yeah.
Similarly for egg, we have albumin. The white part of the egg is albumin. So I thought that, okay, pulses, there must be some pulse which has the protein which is very close to albumin, and that was the moong dal. So I started working on it.
Underdog, low-key moong
Yes,
dal.
That khichdi ka ingredient.
Yeah, exactly.
and everything.
Underappreciated.
Underappreciated. Even people wrote it off from the planet. It doesn't even exist on the dining tables. So that moong dal came very steadily back, and I also got people who said that, do you know the reason why the ill people are fed with moong dal khichdi? Because it is the meal which brings you back to energy, rather than it is the significance. It signifies an ill person. It signifies the shot of energy which is going to bring the person back to life. So that changed my
I thought it was just
perspective.
comfort food, and you're sick and you're craving khichdi. I thought it was just
No,
comfort
it is
food.
The protein you need for rebuilding your system, moong dal gives it. So, and then it is very light on digestion. Your gut bacteria are gone for a toss when you have taken antibiotics enough. So it just comes as a package. So except for the way that it is branded badly, it is all good. So initially they were as every research goes, there were challenges. I couldn't really achieve the texture, but then we kept on working, and then there was a time when we realized that what is the thing which we are missing in contrast to the animal egg, and that was the water holding capacity, that is the moisture. Because as a scrambled egg, it is springy, it has a spring in it, whereas plant protein does not have that spring in it. So it is a very complex protein. So we took it to a step where somebody who is vegetarian, somebody who wants to eat a protein meal, would just put it on the pan and then make a good meal out of himself. And that is very, very close to the scrambled egg, look-wise, taste-wise, and the shelf life is also good. And protein content is higher than the poultry egg. And I'm talking about the post-pan protein, because this was the product in my lab, so I could monitor both continuously. So post-pan protein was higher than the poultry protein post-pan. So that was a very good step we thought we had achieved.
So post-pan is after cooking, as you mentioned.
Yeah, post-pan is when you put it on the plate. Out of heat, when you put it on the plate.
Got it.
So what you are consuming actually,
Okay.
not what you are preparing.
Right. So literally what's on your plate.
Yes.
In that sense.
So now, since it was an industry-funded project, we transferred the technology to the industry. but then there were many industry players who approached me for making, can you make fish for us, or can you make chicken for us, or can you make other type of meats, some beef also, duck, turkey, a long list, then lobsters.
There's competition.
Yeah. So that was like my moment to sit down and think that creating anything in lab as a food researcher would not be a problem for me, because I know my ingredients well. I apply technology. I use artificial intelligence to identifying which plant, which protein, and the corresponding animal protein to it. So that would not be difficult for me. But I really don't want to serve a half-baked cookie out in the market, because that would be a very selfish researcher. I laid 3 conditions to myself. First and foremost, is it going to be sustainable? Second, is it going to be healthy? And third, it is going to be like non-ultra processed. If these 3 things, industry agree to that, then it is worthwhile producing something. So we did produce chicken, we did produce fish, and we did produce jerkies, pork jerkies. Then I thought that apart from meat segment, because meat segment is always on in my lab, we are always creating something. We are screening more and more plants, millets, underutilized plants. So we realized that another big problem which is budding up in India, and most of us, we do not even know that it is happening, that is gluten. So I am also working on gluten-free, like gluten alternate.
What's wrong with gluten?
Gluten is a type of protein which is present in wheat and allied, like superfine flour and other grains which we have. Gluten is, sometimes our body becomes sensitive to gluten, and when it becomes sensitive to gluten, people get rashes, they get physical symptoms on the face, on the skin basically. And this is very similar to food allergy or insect allergy, weather allergy or lactose allergy. So it is primarily, people would not even know that the humble chapati which they had been eating is suddenly revolting inside them. Some data also, because I work with nutritionists, some data have also shown that school children are very steadily becoming gluten sensitive rather than gluten intolerant. That means if in 20,000 grains of cereals which you have, even if you have 1 grain of wheat or a gluten grain, you would show the symptoms.
Have we always been gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive? Or
no, actually,
is it because of GMOs?
No, it's not because of GMO. India mein GMO permitted hi nahi hai. You don't have GMO crops growing in India except BT cotton. Like, you can't grow GMO crop for consumption. It is not permitted. We can have GMO processed, like we can have canola oil imported, because then their canola is GM. We get imported oil. That is perfect. That does not impact our biodiversity. I guess the main reason is when we are making bakery products, there is a process. I mean, for bread, we use our flour, which has gluten, and then we add a bread improver, which has a good amount of gluten, and then we have that constitute about more than around 120, 130%, and then another 30% we add total gluten. Total gluten. Our body doesn't need gluten. And suddenly there is a rush of gluten which is entering inside our body, and bread butter is something everybody eats, every child eats. So our whole system is just not agreeing to what it is eating.
What does gluten do to your body?
Gluten is one of the proteins which comes in the cereals. All the proteins helps in building blocks. Yes. So essentially, isolated, if you take gluten, it does nothing. We don't need gluten. But it is a part of wheat, and then we need food. We need wheat for that dough stretchability and then convenience of baking. If you see, wheat is not even an Indian crop. It has come from Middle East to India. We had traditionally been eating millets. Millets do not have gluten. So when you make bajra, jawar or bajra, the dough is very difficult to align or assemble. Whereas if you see your chapati dough, it is immediately collected. Then it has that stretchability for bread. It just rises. Millet won't do that. So cosmetically, commercially, the food which looks good on the table, it is stretchable, it just gives me that fulfilling feeling that all gluten brings on the table. And because of that, all our rapid food, junk food, it is so heavy on gluten.
That's true.
And people are just getting sugar, gluten, refined, and then those those ultra processed chemicals.
Yeah.
This is a very bad combination to go ahead with.
But if we're talking about disease reversal, if we're talking about diabetes and tuberculosis, is there any particular way of living or a certain type of food that we should be eating to avoid getting those
That is
diseases
an
in the first
ideal world
place?
scenario, Shreya. It doesn't exist now. But again, I would strongly say that moderation is the key. And we should be very aware of what we are consuming, because we have a major chunk, which is the trigger for these diseases, is our own lifestyle. So
What about our lifestyle specifically?
like you see, physical activity has reduced a lot. Bottled water, packeted food have entered into our life. Then the stress level is very high. And these are the things, I mean, the data there is enough data to prove that sugar fluctuations happen because of stress, then blood pressure, and then the corresponding medicines for lifelong. So these are the lifestyles, I think these are the new normals, right? If a person doesn't have an erratic heart rate, or if he doesn't have a stress factor, then he's in the Zen state. You won't find such people around. So any food, like we should be very well aware. There is a concept called mindful eating. So I should eat when I'm hungry. Then I should eat what I need. If I don't need sugar at that point in time, I should unnecessarily not consume a cup of tea. Like drinking tea in offices, a routine thing. People mindlessly consume tea. Dips of sugars and then just drinking. If you just ask them, like one of my students, he's very addicted to tea. So I just asked him, what do you drink tea for? So he said, I don't know. So I said, is it possibly temperature?
Yeah.
Or is it the sweetness? Or is it that
It's a habit as
strength?
well. So many times you're just sitting and you're doing it mindlessly, and it just become a part of your day.
Or it is like the depth or the strength of the tea brew, what you're drinking it for. So he said, I don't know. And this is what we are doing for most of the things. The moment we enter into kitchen, there is a snack counter, and then we just don't know. We just pick up something, and unless we are really hungry, and to generate that hunger, we should be moving physically enough. Nowadays, our life starts from lift to car, then to lift to metro. So
and there's elevators to go to the gym as well.
Yes, and then we go to gym.
Love using.
So our body doesn't recognize us this way. Our body recognizes, like, we are not trees who are made to be stagnant. We like humans come under animal kingdom. So we are supposed to be moving. So, but then we decided to just sit down, and there is some comfort level which we have. Rather, there was a stage where sitting and working was very strongly associated to power symbol, like white collar jobs, somebody sitting on the chair, cleaner clothes, no mudding hands, not running around.
As opposed to working in the fields.
You see your janitors, you see your farmers, you see the construction workers.
Yeah.
They are the ones who are all soiled up, who do not have any time to eat and all. Where in contrast, somebody sitting in AC, having food served, just opening up a Tetra Pak and then drinking whatever he wants to, is considered to be a very prestigious job. Such a wrong choice we have made down the line. And the person would just not get up at the fixed hour and make a time out for his walk or for his gym. He would rather stretch himself to 9 p.m. work. Then also came a trend that sitting late in office is also a symbol of being busy and being more prominent. And another wrong choice we added to our leaf. No physical activity, just going home, dumping ourselves too much of food, and then we sleeping off with so much of stress in the mind. There is no way we were unplugging ourselves, and our body was like, give me some time to at least digest the food. We are not even digesting. Then it was converting into fat and then sugars. So it was a treadmill type of a thing. So
without being on the treadmill.
Without being on the treadmill. That is the truth of it. So we have to make sure that we are not plants. We are animals, animal kingdom. So we are supposed to move. More we move, more our food will get digested, less fat accumulated, more hunger, and then more we'll eat proper food rather than just a bite or just a nibble and then making a good shot of energy and good enough. No, this is not the way the generations will survive.
Running a cultivated meat company, are you vegan, are you vegetarian, are you non-vegetarian? Does that satisfy any of your taste buds?
So I'm a hardcore non-vegetarian. And yes, the idea was basically to identify kill-free or guilt-free meat. And that is the reason why the whole concept of clear meat started. So being from a Kashmiri origin, I'm a Kashmiri Hindu, and we always have had meat because of our availability of food sources. And I remember this all started when I suddenly saw my mother stop eating meat. And this was something new for me during my early days. And I asked her, why did you stop eating meat? She said, today I saw how this meat was, how the animal was killed and how the meat was extracted. Personally, it did not deter me from eating meat, but that thought always remained in my mind. And that is how the journey towards clear meat started, I believe, because when we started this company, it was more focused on identifying the right solutions to the food industry. And I remember during my PhD and postdoc days, we were more focused on identifying a parallel way, or whatever we do in our laboratory, how it can be made available to the consumers, or how a sensible solution can be made to the masses. And Clear Meat was basically focused on identifying meat solutions, more sustainable ways of making meat. And this resonated with my idea of not killing animals. And that is how the whole idea of making meat in lab started. And this is what we have been doing now.
So if cultivated meat would taste the same as animal meat, would you go vegan?
Still no. I will
What's
always
that?
remain non-vegetarian because what I will be making is meat. So the thought process is same. It will always be meat. And obviously, my main purpose of having a protein-rich diet gets justified by eating cultivated meat.
But would you switch from eating animal origin meat that requires slaughtering the animal to meat that is cultivated in a lab?
So that is the reason we started Clear Meat,
Okay.
so that I can shift from eating meat that is not made by killing animals. So yes, once this concept gets applied and is available on shelf for people to eat, this will always be my and my family's first preference of meat. And this is something which we have been discussing lately also.
I'd love to know more about your journey because you're plant-based and why you decided to be vegan.
When I came back to India, I realized that the
Sorry,
food
can I
is
ask where from? Would you want to start from?
like
where
I
you
was
came?
posted in different parts of the world.
Okay.
So when I came back, when I joined IIT and I decided to stay put, I realized that there is a lot of difference between food which is sold as food and the food contents. So that means it was very high on adulteration, and milk being one thing which was severely adulterated.
What is milk adulterated with?
Milk is adulterated with shampoo. Milk is adulterated with refined oil. Milk is adulterated with urea.
Sorry, did you say milk is adulterated with shampoo?
With shampoo, yes. In fact,
Like-
India champions synthetic milk made up of shampoo.
Like shampoo would be
refined
used to clean
shampoo, which is not only used, you would never use that shampoo. It is so low quality. It is just for cleaning buffaloes. It is that bad a shampoo.
that shampoo's added in our milk.
Yeah, and in fact, you go on this. You may cut this component when I speak.
The adulteration
have-
in food is way beyond imagination.
Way beyond imagination.
I would not ever imagine that shampoo was an ingredient in milk that
in
we
fact, the
consume on a
world comes
day-to-day
to learn
basis.
from us. You know, this whole. It is the hotbed of making synthetic milk, and
It's not India. It's
this
outside
is
also.
the World Health Organization report alarming Indian government, saying that the amount of milk circulated in the country is not even the amount which is produced. So where are you getting all this milk from? And that is the fluid milk we are talking about. That is white liquid milk. There is a good amount of milk which we dry, sell it as milk powder. We are number one in world in producing milk powder. Then there is skim milk. Then we have paneer, we have curd, we have cheese, and then we have fluid milk. And then this is not even produced. Yes, this is a fact. So that was like a bolt from the blue, and I decided, okay, I'm not taking milk.
Sorry, but coming back to milk adulteration, you said you found shampoo.
I did not find it. It is a recorded thing. Government
Still,
knows it.
sir,
Government knows it.
Tier 3, Tier 4 cities,
Yes.
railway stations serve tea that uses milk which has shampoo as one of the additives.
Yes.
Let me put it this way.
And they add oil to it, and so that when you boil it in the kitchen, you get exactly the same amount of cream, the malai which you get because of refined oil, the same fat globules, golden on the milk. No way you can discriminate unless you put it for laboratory testing. One of the students which is doing PhD with me, we are developing a sensor for household detection of milk. Industrial detection we have, but then they are for Amul, Mother Dairy, big giant.
We will have to cut that out. I'm still in shock. I'm sorry. I didn't know there was shampoo.
But I'm surprised you didn't know it, because
I had no idea because for me, milk, the the reason I left it was for ethical reasons. I know it has antibiotics and hormones, and it's high in estrogen, of course, because it comes from a mother cow, lactating cow. So the reason that I stopped consuming milk was understanding the fact that we're the only mammals that consume milk from another mammal.
Yeah, but this is not even the problem when you realize you are consuming the milk which is synthetically prepared, basically a shampoo solution you are preparing. In contrast to that, do you really think that taking the share of a calf is that big a thing?
That's true. I am going to ask you to repeat what's in the milk because I cut you off. That shampoo thing was so shocking for me. I think I went all the way down to, is it the same shampoo we wash our hair with?
So the common ingredients, some of them are even permissible, like formaldehyde is permitted. That is to increase the shelf life of the milk. That is, but then only in a certain quantity. Some of them which are extremely hazardous are shampoo, oil, urea, bit of flavor. These are the sugar. They add sugar abundantly to give that sweetness, the natural sweetness of the milk. These are very common adulterants, and the government is well aware. There are the food committee goes everywhere. The Holi is coming very soon, and you would find this khoya suddenly flooded into the market to make gujiyas, and so much of adulterated khoya. You would have food safety committees going, making just trapping those people, and then if you just watch television, you would find piles and piles of it. Paneer.
How does this extend to skimmed milk powder, as you said, skimmed milk, milk powder, paneer?
Yeah, so I'll just explain it this way. Let us suppose India produces 100 liters of milk, fluid milk, liquid milk. Now, as a global exporter, we are number one in dried milk, that is milk powder. We are number one in skimmed milk, that is the thin milk. We are number one in curd, yogurt, paneer, then frozen yogurts and liquid yogurts. And we are also doing very good in fluid milk. So everything else, for everything else I mentioned, you have to have fluid milk. Now, apart from so many products which are made, like from the kitty, it's all deducting from that 100 liters only. No? So how is it possible that you have everything else and still you're having so much of milk? You're cutting the cake and having it too. It is technically not possible. And that is why WHO categorically alarmed Indian government that can you please have a look at it, the amount of adulteration in the milk. And the target segment for the milk is babies, agile people, recovering people. And this is what if they are consuming, then you really need to be alert and aware of this.
Mind is blown in the truest sense.
No, this is a documented report in open platform. This is by World Health Organization.
You should start a new channel on food only.
I think I have to, because there's new things that I uncover and discover every single day. And like I said, I went vegan for ethical reasons, so I never really looked into the nutritional aspect of it or the synthetic aspect of it or additives for that matter. For me, as long as if it's non-vegan, I would just not consume it. And that's the category that milk and dairy products fell into.
The way you're shocked, I was equally shocked. So that was my first take on veganism, that okay, I'm not going to consume milk. And then I realized honey was not the flour extract, it was rather the rice molasses which was being adulterated. And then I dug a little more, and then I realized that we had also been banned in history from exporting honey because too much of sugar molasses, we were passing it off as honey. So I realized, okay, honey is also dropped. And then bread, already enough gluten I had read about, so bread is also dropped because of yeast. Then I realized, okay, am I a vegan now? All right, I am vegan. So dropping one component, then the gate which opened for me was saying, oh, welcome to the vegan world. And I said, okay, there I am.
That's
I'm
the
vegan
utopia.
Now. Yes.
That's heaven. You've arrived in heaven.
Yes.
We'll get you over soon.
So that was my journey of veganism. And I realized that I was not missing on anything. Initially, I thought that would I be able to live if I don't have ghee on my chapati, or if I'm not having milk in my tea. And then I realized, no, life is still going on. It's just so fine. Rather, I'm consuming less of tea. I am not eating unwanted fat, and I'm just good. So it turned out to be the healthier choice I made.
So you've never thought of it as a sacrifice? You've never thought of it as giving up on something?
No, I thought that it is a very... some good sense prevailed upon me to take care of my health. And yes, I am not going to go back to the non-vegan stuff any further. No, I can't.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because it makes you feel so clean now. It just makes you feel so non-tiring.
That's true. My
Fresh.
energy levels have definitely been high. I've been vegan 8 years and I don't feel that sense of being bloated or lethargic
True.
after a meal.
Yeah.
Definitely high on energy.
You
for
two
sure.
vegans are trying to convert me to veganism. I will not. Still, I
would
will
you
not.
want to sit in the middle so we can try from both ends? But what, apart from the taste and culture, what honestly deters you from going vegetarian or going vegan?
It's I would say, see, honestly, I do not understand because of the adulterations that have happened and because of how complex the whole food ecosystem is or the industrial ecosystem is. I believe we are directly, indirectly not able to categorize ourselves into vegetarianism or veganism. So it's better to be safe and take a path which includes everything. So it's my personal take. I do not question anyone, or I don't want to harm anyone's intention. But coming to my end, I personally feel because of my dietary requirements, I will not be able to accept the concept of veganism, and it will not suffice to my routine. That is one of the reasons. That's why I told you it's individual's acceptance to what he or she wants to eat. And this is something that I've realized in the last couple of years. It may change, I do not know. But as of now, it is like this.
We haven't tried hard enough.
Yeah,
We've
true.
not been hard on him.
We were supposed to be the champions.
Exactly. We're supposed to expand our cult, but
True. Adding one more person on this side of the
please,
fence.
you have to see the bright glowing vegan
So that's
world.
why I told you,
Great.
it's not pushing myself that I will not accept it. But as of now, I am not of the opinion. But in the coming years, I might.
I guess his pride is dominating him right now, but very soon he'll swallow it and become vegan. I wish and pray for that.
We're all hoping and praying for
Yes.
that, I guess.
You both tried your best, but I'm not closing
We'll
my.
wait till we meet again.
Yeah,
This
for
time
sure.
we can give,
Definitely. So, I mean, there's so many aspects, right? There's environment, there's carbon emissions. I mean, environment, sustainability, carbon emissions, one bucket. Then there's the animal ethical aspect of it. You already have that empathy when it comes to eating meat that is cruelty free.
Right.
So that I think you're there.
You're saying
there.
the points that you've raised are
Getting
good. I'm trying my best to understand them, but still, as of now, I'm stuck
We'll
to the
give you
sustainability.
time,
Yeah,
don't-
I'm stuck to the
But we'll wait for
sustainability
you
part of
there.
it. How you have been raised, I would not comment on the ethnicity of any individual, but we have always been governed by our local food habits. And these local food habits play a very vital role in how our taste buds behave. The words might be not properly aligned. Using the term blood might not be the right way of putting it. But yes, our taste buds have an acceptance to certain factors. And that can only be achieved by true meat or raw meat or hardcore meat. Now, for people who are non-vegetarians and who have tasted that or whose taste buds have accepted that product, for them shifting to vegan or vegetarian is slightly difficult for them because they are unable to match that expectations. And this is where I feel lab-grown or cultivated meat is able to take charge of it. So taking control of the sustainability, cruelty-free, guilt-free, and antibiotic-free, hormones-free meat, and parallelly providing the same acceptance.
So it serves the purpose.
Yes.
I'd love to talk about nanotechnology, role of AI, blockchain in the future of food and where we're headed.
See, nanotechnology, the power of nano is like, it is very small. So when we want to create food, when we want to grow food and when we want it to be fortified with all macro and micronutrients, when we are producing a food in industry or in laboratory, and when we want to inject or when we want to power pack it with all minerals and nutrients which densely pack like that. So nanotechnology comes a very quick way because nanoparticles are like 10 to the power minus 9. They are very small. They cross your blood-brain barrier. So the moment you wrap your food into it, or the moment you are packaging your food and you are coating it with nano nutrient,
What do you mean by nanonutrients?
The nutrients, let us say zinc or let us say iron, it is reduced to 10 to the power minus 9 size, and then you are adding it as an additive, or you are coating your food packaging, edible packaging if you have, so you just coat it with, so that becomes very quickly assimilated by the body because it is very small in size.
What's the difference between micronutrients and macronutrients?
Yeah,
And what do they entail?
Macronutrients are something which we had been taught about, like the balanced meal. That means fats, carbohydrates, proteins, calciums, minerals. These are the macronutrients. But micronutrients are something like macronutrients are required by our body in large quantities to build up, to give us enough strength, to cover our bones, muscle part of it. But micronutrients are something which are required in very, very less amount. Let us say selenium. Selenium is one of the elements which is required by our body in very less amount.
Where do you get it from?
We get it from food, green leafy vegetables, but they are already present in very small amount, and that is enough for our body. We don't need more. So deficiency of macronutrients make you visibly undernourished, but deficiency of micronutrients gives you the symptoms like you are very tired, you do not have enough energy, you have cramps, body cramps coming up, then your nails are cracked, they are not good enough, your hair splitting apart.
So that's keratin? Is that a micronutrient?
No, keratin is a
protein.
protein.
It's a protein.
Yeah. So for hair, you need different types of protein, but you also need, like hair is a different thing altogether. You just, I would rather say like your nails when they are very brittle. Okay, so you need zinc, you need magnesium, and you need calcium for those. So, but then in very, very small amount. You can't have chapati quantity zinc.
Got it.
You can't have that.
Yeah.
Nano is not the amount which is required by a body. It is the size reduced. So you can have one protein molecule, but you reduce the size to 10 to the power minus 9 so that it is assimilated in the body very quickly, directly into the bloodstream. Yeah. So that is a favorable thing to do. The thing what we are not very sure of, there are two things. One is the toxicity, another is the half-life period. Because when we are adding it to the soil and then it is so tiny that it gets absorbed by plant and then to animals and then to us.
Bioaccumulation as well and biomagnification?
So we really don't know where it will stop. So, and what it will get converted into. So it is going to break down into the basic elements, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen. Nano is already very small. What it is going to break down into, how it is going to impact our body. So at least for that, I need 100-year, 80-year data, which I don't have. I am accumulating, possibly somebody will have it from my lab. So that we are not very sure of. Then at this point, artificial intelligence plays a role because it calculates, the combinations, the degradations, and then it just gives me, in an algorithm, it just makes me do the time travel, and it is going to say 50 years down the line, this is going to be the fate and shape of nanoparticle. So there I know, okay, this is toxic, I should not be adding it. It may be mutating, I should not be adding it. So that makes me, the application of technology makes me develop safe food, not only for today, but for posterity. So that is the reason I use a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning, apply models. For blockchain, you asked, blockchain is very essential as knowing the traceability from where my food is sourced, and then end to end it is connected. And the moment I want to know, is it like, was this truck ever stopped in the journey? Is the content offloaded and filled with something adulterated? I would really know because everything is monitored or mapped. So to have a clean food chain, a food supply chain, it is very important to have a blockchain in place.
Do you support that as well?
So I totally agree with this concept of AI and being applied, because this is what we are also trying to do. We are collectively, making meat in lab basically gives us a leverage that we can understand how cells are behaving and then figure out the application. And parallelly, yes, we do need data sets or data centers to understand the future impact of this meat and how the cells will behave in the longer run. And it has to be implemented because, as we were discussing earlier also, the use of that every individual should be aware of what he or she is eating. This AI basically helps us do that. So you are able to make individual-centric food products. So this is something we also do a vision in our company, and this is my personal objective. That I know it is a hypothetical objective, but still something that we perceive to obtain at. So making meat in lab, it provides the nutrition that we require. But parallelly, for taking an example of diabetes, because my family has an history of diabetes, diabetic people require insulin as a supplement. So they should not use supplements, but instead they should eat meat that is filled with insulin. So it is providing nutrient specific products to the individual. And here, this is where blockchain and AI plays a very vital role in understanding the behavior of a cell. So yes, we are also in line with the concept of
What's
using.
the vegan solution to diabetes without consuming meat?
Diabetes is largely a pancreatic issue, like insulin issue. Meat or no meat does not play a very strong role in diabetes. It is largely when your body does not produce enough insulin to control the sugar. So you need to take more sugar, more insulin to have your sugar rushing into your bloodstream. Because too much of sugar rushing into the bloodstream, then it is going to give you hyperglycemia. It is going to give you foggy, disoriented brain responses. So it is very important that it should be in moderation. And insulin does that in our body. When that function goes worry, when it just doesn't perform well, insulin is basically a hormone also in our body. So you have to take it synthetically. And taking insulin comes at a later stage when the diabetes is advanced. Initially, there are medicines to control it. And prior to that, it is the food which we control. But as I said, that alone food does not make a difference. It is stress, no activity, genetics, and food. It is a combination of four. People with no diabetic history have been found to be severely diabetic or chronic diabetic because of too much of stress taking capacity, or rather habit, and no lifestyle, no movement, nothing, because it all gets accumulated. There's a very, very funny saying that what you eat in private shows in public. Yeah, so
That's true.
diabetes is one of those, because then you start having symptoms like you always need something to eat for a security reason. You might have a blackout,
Yeah.
or diabetes may cause underweight or overweight depending upon how your body is responding to it. So if you have your lifestyle checked, that means your movement checked, more in lifestyle is that, your food checked, you are not eating too much of hidden sugar food, you have your stress checked, you're not taking too much of stress, and your genetics, your genetic history checked, then there is a less chance that you would have diabetes.
Siddharth, Kavya, any parting takeaways for anyone who's trying to be a better consumer or a more mindful consumer, trying to learn more about where their food comes from and what they're eating? What do they need to look out for, and what can we do?
So my parting dialogue would be that one has to be aware of what one is eating, being more, figuring out more sustainable ways of having a healthy food, becoming more conscious with respect to the quality and the nutritional value of the product, and at the same time understanding the traceability of the product. Irrespective of what is the choice of one's, one can be whatever one wants, but parallelly identify the right sustainable way to have food.
Yeah, I would strongly urge the people, the consumers, that since you are putting out your money there, be extremely demanding. People, industries, government, regulators should be as transparent as they can be in putting up a label on your food. Do not overlook the importance of portions. Portions do matter. Don't eat mindlessly. You have to have a mindful eating. Third important thing which I would like to say is, you are not plants, you're animals. Move. More you'll move, you'll feel hungry, you'll eat real food. And the last thing which I would like to say is, don't eat what you do not produce in kitchen, with the ingredients you do not produce in kitchen. That means hyper or ultra processed food. It is not required. We can have cleaner food. Processed food is fine, but hyper processed food is cheap. It is affecting a good amount of our population in terms of nutritionally deprived, particularly for children. Don't just make them a victim of your kindness, that you will just agree to them for a better, tasty future. No, this is not the way to be. You are adult, you are grown up, take a strong stand. I would also urge the government that please mandatorily remove the cute, animated, the Disney wala, or maybe the famous characters from the kid stuff, because that is where the problem starts. And parents are helpless, they just can't resist after a certain while, and children are too innocent to understand. And it all starts from that logo. It all starts from that insignia. Please stop it. We need to be aware.
What does sustainability mean to you?
For me,
Yes.
it's again having meat from an animal who is just sitting next to me
Without killing the animal.
without killing them.
Great. Sustainability for me means I can eat the food which I want to, but I don't want to tax it on my planet. My planet and the people who are not eating it have the equal right to live on this planet. We are cohabitating. So the resources are shared resources. So I just can't make a hard choice of taste over the healthier planet. So that is what sustainability is to me.
I've honestly learned so much. Thank you for letting me be a student and ask you as many questions and for answering them in the most detailed way possible. And I've learned some shocking facts as well about the meat dairy industry. And thank you for letting me make that, science kid in me come alive again. Honestly, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
It was surely our pleasure, Shreya, speaking to you and Siddharth, getting to know about the perspective. And I never miss a chance to speak to somebody who's a potential consumer as well. Rather, I tell my students that wherever you go in life, whatever you be, your permanent status is the status of a consumer. It will never change.
Yeah.
So
in the capitalist world, at least.
It is. And for everything you need to buy. So make a good consumer out of yourself. Make it the best one. Be very demanding.
Oh, I will be. I promise you that. I definitely will be.
I'm understanding how the consumer will behave when our products are on shelf.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm honestly rooting for you as well because you are trying to get animals out of the ecosystem.
Yes.
You are trying to get animals off our plate. And
Yes.
as staunch vegans, we're definitely supporting that. And I wish you a lot of success
Thank you.
in that business and company as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.